Carta of the Middletown Health Department, and this is Healthline. For many of us, the arrival of spring is a welcome time of year with flowering buds and blooming trees. It can also mean the beginning of constant sneezing, itchy, watery eyes, and a stuffy nose for the millions of people who are affected by seasonal allergies. Dr. Kevin McGrath explains the causes of seasonal allergies, their triggers, and how medical treatment and lifestyle changes can minimize the symptoms associated with seasonal allergies. Welcome to Healthline. Our guest today is Dr. McGrath, Kevin McGrath, actually. He's a physician with adult and pediatric allergy and asthma of Connecticut. And Dr. McGrath, we'd like to thank you for returning to Healthline. It's been a number of years, but welcome back.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
And let's refresh everybody about their memories about what a seasonal allergy is versus asthma.
Well, seasonal allergies are usually the ones that come out in the spring and the fall, as opposed to year-round allergies. Year-round allergies would be things like dust, house dust. The dust mites are the main allergic component of house dust. Cats, dogs. Year-round are those type. The seasonal ones would be grass, trees, ragweed, molds. Those would be the ones that come out in the spring and the fall. So in the spring, usually you have trees that come out first, then grasses and weeds. Molds usually start in the spring when everything thaws. They continue year-round and then peak in the spring and the fall when the leaves hit the ground.
And when I said asthma, that's not the same as an allergy. That's something different.
Correct. So the typical symptoms of nasal allergies would be sneezing, itching, congestion, postnasal drip, the fatigue of allergies that we see a lot of. Asthma would be shortness of breath, chest tightness, coughing, and wheezing. And one of the big things we see a lot with asthma is people waking up in the middle of the night. Often they think they have to go to the bathroom, but it's actually that the asthma is waking them up in the middle of the night because they're not getting enough oxygen, and then they realize they have to go to the bathroom.
Are people born with allergies or seasonal allergies? Or what happens?
Well, you have to have a genetic predisposition, so it tends to run in families. And then you have to have enough exposure and something turns on a switch that makes people allergic. With things like asthma, sometimes it's a serious viral infection or upper respiratory tract infection that seems to turn it on. We also know that people have nasal allergies that go untreated for many years will go on to develop asthma more likely. But nasal allergies can turn on at any point, just as food allergies can.
Are they different intensities from season to season, or is it pretty much the same year after year?
Well, we've seen increasing spring seasons for the last 5 to 7 years. So we're getting higher pollen counts and we're getting longer pollen seasons. And if we have a lot of rain in the winter and snow and ground cover, we'll get a lot of molds as well. But we are seeing worse and worse spring pollen seasons. Fall varies depending on what the summer is like as far as how much rain we get, what the weather is like. But the spring season seems to be continuously getting worse the last 7 to 10 years, actually.
Part of your practice is with children. How young do you see children that have these seasonal allergies?
We've seen them down to ages of 3 and 4 that kids will start having it. We used to think that you'd have to be a little older, maybe 5, 6, or 7 before they saw enough seasons to get it. But we're starting to see more and more allergies in children. And certainly we see food allergies even in infants, but we're starting to see it down to younger and younger ages. The majority of people that develop nasal allergies will get it as children, but we see people that develop it for the first time in their 20s and 30s, and we see people even in their 60s and 70s that develop at any point in their life. And it's very frustrating when you're retired and now you have the time to go play golf or go garden and do those outside things. You never had any problems, and suddenly you go out and start doing those things and trigger allergies. It can be pretty frustrating.
Do you have any idea what would cause that so late in life?
Nobody really knows. You just turn on, that's kind of the holy grail of allergy, what turns on that switch that have the predisposition to it. And if you could figure that out, you could turn it off. So, that's kind of like the research, goal of everything in allergy and asthma. But we do know certain things do increase it. We know that having if you have more likely of allergies, you'll go on to develop asthma. So we know you're more likely to get asthma. We know asthma is more likely if you are an only child, if you are not in daycare, if you're not exposed to other kids. But the problem with that is if you do develop nasal allergies, then again, you're more likely to go on to get asthma.
You said that in the top of the show that it tends to run in families. Males, females more common? Does it make
We
a
see a little
difference?
bit more in females, but it tends to be pretty equal between the sexes. Children, again, are the most likely that we see to start to develop allergies as well as asthma, but it can happen at any age. There's really not, if you have one child, you have one parent, I should say, that has allergies or any kind of allergies or asthma, you have about a 50% chance of each child having that. If you have two parents, you have about an 85% chance. Now, that could be nasal allergies, it could be medication allergies, could be food allergies, could be asthma, could be eczema or atopic dermatitis, but we know it is genetically predisposed and something turns that switch on.
Do you find that people, when they first get seasonal allergies, tend to treat themselves with over-the-counter medications, and then at some point it gets so bad that they need to come and see a physician like yourself?
Yeah, most of the time people will use the over-the-counter antihistamines, the Claritin, the Allegra, Zyrtec, Zysel. Some people even are aware of the over-the-counter topical nasal steroid sprays like Flonase, Nasacort, Rhinocort. But a lot of people don't know which ones are more effective. Which ones are a better choice, when to use them, what combinations. So at some point, the natural history of allergy is that you get worse and worse over time. So you get progressively worse season after season after season. And at that point, usually a lot of people will come see an allergist. We'll usually do skin testing, evaluations, see what medications they may not have tried that might work. And then often for a lot of people, allergy immunotherapy or allergy injections really is the only thing that reverses that natural progression or worsening of allergy from season to season. And it also is the only thing that really helps for the fatigue of nasal allergies, that tired, exhausted, chronic feeling that people have. The allergies themselves, that inflammation, kicks you out of a deep, restful sleep. So people can sleep 8, 9, 10 hours and wake up tired, exhausted, fatigued just from the allergies. So it's a quality of life issue for a lot of patients. And then if you add in having asthma that's not controlled, and that wakes you up in the middle of your sleep at night, now you're really having a lot of problems.
A lot of issues there. You're listening to Healthline. Our guest today is Dr. Kevin McGrath. Dr. McGrath is a physician with adult and pediatric allergy and asthma of Connecticut. And Dr. McGrath, would you say that being in New England is worse than other parts of the country, or there's seasonal allergies everywhere?
Well, we see it everywhere, but I think New England is kind of one of the worst possible areas for allergies. The beautiful season changes that we have here and the leaves that hit changing in the fall are things that give us pretty high mold counts in the fall. We certainly have pretty good seasons. I mean, if you go deep south, their grass seasons and tree seasons can go even longer. But we do have fairly significant, and certainly for national allergy groups that have looked at the worst cities for allergies and the worst states, Connecticut has ranked up there several times as number one or in the top 10 at least. So it is a pretty difficult place for allergies. But the beautiful spring and fall we have, everybody wants to be outside, is also when people have the most problems. So you definitely want to get those allergies under control.
Yeah, you hear people often say, well, you need to move out of the area, you need to go to Arizona, something like that. Not really going to do the trick.
No, when I first started practicing, because I always wanted to see what the situation is different places when I travel to conferences. There's plenty of allergists in Arizona. There's plenty of allergists in Las Vegas. There's plenty of allergists everywhere. Part of the problem with the desert Southwest is everybody wanted to bring all the trees and grasses and beautiful waterfalls, and fountains and everything. So now the humidity out there has gone up, and not only do they have their desert problems and those plants, but now they're starting to have other problems. And you also get a lot of problems with what are called swamp coolers out there as well. Whereas instead of using air conditioning because it's so difficult to get it cool, they have pools of tanks of water where they blow fans over it. So what happens is those tend to grow a lot of molds. So you'll find this very dry place in the desert Southwest, but then they've got this tremendous mold problem in the indoors from these swamp coolers. And that's why they call them swamp coolers, because they look like swamps after a while if you don't clean them up.
And we hear a lot about mold. Exactly how does mold affect one's health?
Well, it definitely triggers off nasal allergies. It will definitely trigger off asthma. There are very rare cases where, people have heard about the, quote, black mold and those kind of things where they can really infect buildings. And, that's very rare. What the majority of patients actually get exposed to are common indoor and outdoor molds that grow on, they'll grow in your shower curtains, they'll grow in your bathrooms, they'll grow on the bottom of laundry baskets, any place, your basements, anything that gets too damp and sits there for a while. And then outdoors, usually it'll grow on decaying vegetable matter. So any dead leaves, any grass, those kind of thing, mulch piles, all that is basically where molds grow. And it is a natural thing that breaks up products, but unfortunately you can become allergic to it, and it can trigger off nasal allergies and trigger off asthma as well.
And again, exposure, does that mean you're going to develop something? If you're exposed to some type of trigger for a long time, does that mean necessarily that the more likelihood that you may become allergic to that?
If you do have the genetic predisposition to something, i.e. allergies or asthma, the more you're exposed to those environmental allergens, then the more likely you are. So we often tell people, if you're concerned outside, wear a mask. There's pretty good pollen and mold masks that you can get in most of the department stores, Home Depots and Lowe's and places like that. And you can wear those, and that'll cut down on your exposure. One of the things we tell people as far as triggering allergies or asthma is to wash their hair in the spring, because the hair will actually attract allergens and it'll stick to your hair, and when you sleep at night it loses the charge and dumps that into your pillow. So sometimes it's good to wash your hair at night, or even just take a damp cloth if you've been outside a lot and wipe down the hair before you go to bed.
And probably a good idea to change that pillowcase and
absolutely,
the linen
you should,
quite a bit.
A couple of things: wash your sheets every week in hot water, dry them a little extra dry in the dryer. That breaks up a lot of allergen. Try and wash your quilts and blankets. Use washable ones. Do that every 2 to 4 weeks. And I don't recommend dryer sheets. There's a lot of chemicals in it. And I don't recommend any scented products. You're better off with no dyes, no scents for laundry soap, fabric softener. And don't use all the plug-ins and spray stuff. So those scents can irritate a lot of people. They don't cause allergies, but they'll trigger similar symptoms to it. And people with allergies can trigger very easily to all those plug-ins, sprays, smells, anything that has a lot of odor.
And people without allergies probably don't recognize that some of the things they're doing actually affect people with allergies and
absolutely
make things worse.
You can go into somebody's house and you'll be surprised, because the nose reacts to any kind of a noxious stimulant by basically down regulating that nasty smell. So when you go to somebody's house and they have 5 cats, and you can walk in and go, wow, it smells like cat urine in here, those people won't smell that. Well, the same thing will happen if they're using too many plug-ins and deodorizers. You walk in and you're like, whoa, this is unbelievable, and they don't smell it anymore. And the same thing if it's a moldy environment. They may not smell the molds in their house or in there after a while, because the nose will down-regulate, and they just don't. It's the same thing why people that abuse too much perfume or cologne. They actually don't smell it, so they keep putting more and more on, and everybody else like, wow, you're drowning it, you're killing me, why are you doing that? And those are the kind of issues you run into with basically the non-irritant, the irritant, non-allergic kind of triggers for people.
Besides medications, are there other treatments? I'm just thinking of something like acupuncture or something like that, or natural products that would help somebody with allergies?
Well, there are people that are studying into alternative care and natural products. The most of our patients that are really looking for alternative or natural will go with the allergy injections, because they don't want to use medications. They don't want to have to do all these extra things. So that's really probably one of the most natural things, is you're actually using your body and the injections to turn your body around, not to react to that. But there are studies going on those kind of things. There's nothing that's really proven to be overwhelmingly effective right now, but there's certainly research that's ongoing.
And if people want more information or want to get a hold of you, how could they do that?
Our website is sneezenotwheezenot.com. You can go to acAAI.org or 4A's and an I.org for National Allergy Organizations for more information.
Healthline is produced by the Community Health Education section of the Middletown Health Department, which is solely responsible for its content. Please join us again next month at this time for another edition of Healthline.